people are scared to use crypto, and they're right. They're right to be scared to use crypto.
Yeah.
I am scared every time I see an airdrop that I want to claim, and I'm like, how positive am I that this is the right page?
Is this the right link? Yeah.
Is this the right link? Because if it's not, everything's gone.
Greetings, everybody. Welcome to Flywheel, your number one source for everything Frax, DeFi, and all that's in between. If you want to know what's going on in the world on chain, well, you come to the right place. This is DeFi Dave, here with capital K, and we are here to help you harness the power of the flywheel. And this time around, we go all into on-chain reputation, all about, going beyond the world of just financial transactions and into the world of, just culture and social things. And we go into that with David Phelps. This time around, it's just me. This is a DeFi Dave solo performance. Kit was taking a little nappy nap, an extended nappy nap. So
my bad, y'all.
If you're a Kit fan, I'm sorry. You're just going to have to deal with me. But honestly, like, David Phelps is one of my favorite Twitter accounts. I think he has like a lot of great insights in a lot of areas, from incentive design to just like, how do we get people to actually be using crypto? And he's built like a phenomenal product with Joke Race. We're using Joke Race for one of our contests, but it's just, it's all on chain, like creating contests on chain. And I think Web3, like the main crux of this episode is like Web3 really unlocks things that you just couldn't do in Web2. Because Web2, everything's closed systems, while Web3 is everything's open systems. So in the same way you have money Legos, you can have these social Legos with all these like fun on-chain games. So this is what we get into, Ken. So you're going to just have to be the listener here. You're going to have to let Daddy DeFi Dave take the driver's seat. So, but before we get into it, make sure you go ahead, subscribe, hit that bell button on YouTube, leave us a comment, let us know what you think. Follow us on all our socials at Flywheel DeFi on Twitter, TikTok, and Telegram. Farcaster at Flywheel. Make sure you go to our website, flywheeldefi.com. Go ahead, subscribe for all the latest alpha and updates on Frax and DeFi. You'll thank yourself later. You can follow me on Twitter at DeFi Dave.
You can follow me at 0xcapital_K.
And let's get the flywheel spinning. Do you hold ETH but don't know what to do with it? Want to earn those juicy liquid staking derivative yields but don't know where to start? Well, FrxETH is there for you. FrxETH is Frax's native LSD solution, allowing you to earn boosted yields in multiple ways on your ETH. If you want to get started, go to app.frax.finance and turn your ETH into FrxETH today. All right, everyone. Welcome back to Flywheel. I'm your host, DeFi Dave, doing this one solo dolo this time.
Good luck. Yeah, you got to manage me all on your own.
This is a lot. This podcast is sponsored by Dave DAO. This is a Dave DAO special. I have on David Phelps, founder of Joker Race, shit poster and thoughtful societal and crypto commentator on X, Twitter, whatever you call it. David, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you. Just to shill Dave DAO, I think it's really important to drive home our values and what we stand for, which are that we are not Ben DAO.
We are not Ben DAO.
Yeah, this is important. So if you too are not Ben DAO, I highly encourage you to change your name to Dave or David and join Dave DAO. It's really the morally correct thing to do, and you'll probably be looked out upon if you don't.
Yeah, and you'll probably be looked up to if you join Dave DAO. And for all the Daves out there, David, even if you have an interesting spelling and it's close, we want you to join Dave DAO. So go ahead, hit me up, hit David up, and we can get you right in the Dave DAO group.
I feel like we need a referral network, like for people who refer David should also be able to get in, like some referral incentive.
Proof of Dave.
Tokenomics leave a little bit to be desired with Dave DAO, but we'll get there. We'll get there.
Do you know the story behind how Dave DAO formed?
I think it was just everyone fucking hated Ben.eth.
No. It was before that. So I remember it must have been NFT NYC November 2021. I was with I think David Hoffman. I was with David Hoffman during the week, and he wanted to call it David DAO. I'm like, no, we got to call it Dave DAO. I'm like, Dave DAO rolls off the tongue better, didn't know? It was at like the Bankless party that was on like the end of it. I was like, yo, we got to call it Dave DAO, and we started on Discord. Eventually, the group moved over to Telegram, and we've been recruiting members strong ever since. Dave DAO strong.
I am. It really aligns with my personal values. Actually, I would say, yeah. My political ideology is very well embodied by the spirit of Dave DAO, which is to pump my own name. So yeah, all in favor.
One nation under Dave, or one chain, or should I say one Dave Rollup?
When Dave chain, yeah.
When Dave chain.
Where's our Dave chain? David Hoffman, if you believe in the roll-up thesis so much, where's our fucking Dave chain?
Yeah, and you know what? Every Dave can have their own coin. Okay, we're getting ahead.
Okay. Serious. Yeah.
Okay, let's get. Okay, so David, let's get into the interview. What's your background and how'd you get into crypto?
Yeah, so I try to give a different answer to this every time that someone asks. So I'll talk today. So I'm Joke Race is my third company. I had two companies before this. I'll spare everyone the boring details about those. But during the pandemic, of course, we had all this extra time, and I joined the Generalist. Mario Gabriele is like great community for people thinking about business, and they were doing an econ reading group, and so I joined this econ reading group. And I've been into crypto and investing in crypto for 3 or 4 years at that point. But I wasn't working in the space. I didn't know anybody in the space. And the econ group was not a crypto econ group at all. It was just, to discuss general macro econ trends. And they're reading Ray Dalio, and I'm in there with Annika Lewis, who's currently at Eco. And Anik and I are, reading this, and we're thinking, okay, Dalio has this really compelling point that the dollar, is in decline. That is a 300-year cycle overall, but the decline cycle takes about 80 years to play out normally. We can see this playing out. It's following the same trends as it was before. And so then the question is, if the dollar is in decline, what's going to take its place? And the common answer, I think, during the pandemic was China. It was very clear China is this global superpower that is going to be the next dominant, empire that is, in some ways, Chinese yen is going to be the future, right? And Anik and I both kind of had this, I think, simultaneous thought, and we were like, well, what if it's not China? What if it's the internet? What if the internet is the next big, giant empire with its own reserve currency that is actually going to disrupt the dollar? And we're like, well, if that's true, then it's crypto. Crypto is the reserve currency of the internet, right? Of this empire. And I think it's my belief in that is definitely just grown a lot stronger looking at what's happening in China right now, looking at what's happening with the internet right now over the past, 4 years. And so that was really the moment where Anik and I think both, if I can speak for her, both basically said, oh, we have to work in this industry. There's just no other industry we can work in.
So you kind of came to this conclusion, not because somebody proselytized this to you or tried to preach oh, crypto this, oh, blockchain, kumbaya, whack me. It was no, you're in this general econ reading group and you were just thinking about, hey, what's the next world reserve currency? And
that's the story I want to give. Yeah. The more accurate story is I was hooking up with somebody in 2017 who's like, oh, my friends are making all this money on Bitcoin. I was like, oh, fuck, I can't miss out on that shit. But we're going to leave that story aside and we're going to stick with the Ray Dalio,
we'll stick with the more proper buttoned up story.
Yeah, the intellectual.
We'll save that for the next time you're on here. Mm-hmm. When Kit's on, Kit can ask you the question. Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. Okay. And so how did you go from having this aha moment, we have to work in this industry? So did you go out, start looking for jobs? When did you join Twitter? What was your next step from there?
Yeah. So I just joined Twitter right after that, I think. This is in March 2021. So 3 years ago. Mm-hmm. And yeah, I was still running my previous company at that point. And so I wasn't necessarily looking to build a company. I just kind of wanted to experiment. And so I started getting involved in DAOs because that was the easiest way to start actually experimenting and playing with it. It was also DAOs were very close to the company I built before, which was a tutoring agency where we had decentralized the agency to give people a lot more power, sovereignty, and earnings in order to take a smaller take rate, but then be able to grow organically without any operational overhead. And so DAOs really like spoke to me, I think, and as someone who had seen that thesis play out really successfully in my previous business. And so I started getting into those and playing around with it. And then EcoDAO was a DAO that I started to support the environment. And, you know, I was playing with all these things. And then Joke Race really came about. So if we had, you know, it's what, 2021 around February, March that I kind of had this conversion with Annika. And December that year is where I come up with, you know, the original idea for Joke Race, which is a game. It's a proof of concept, and it's a game for people to tell really bad jokes. And the idea is if you tell really bad jokes, you can try to earn by getting second place. I mean, and really what I was, you know, thinking when I came up with this was like, we have built all these governance systems that are based entirely off voting. But what if we also open this up for submission? Like, what if there's another piece to this where
another dimension?
Another dimension to reward people's creative contribution. Like, we just take it for granted that from our own politics and democracy that voting is the only way you have a say in anything, because that's what we're taught. We're taught that the only way you have a say in anything is voting. And right now we have this whole discourse of, you know, which president you're going to vote for, and your vote matters so much. And, you know, you have to vote for one of them because otherwise you're betraying the cause. And, and my thought was, well, voting actually isn't really necessarily always that meaningful. Like, maybe your ability to put forward your own voice and get other people to vote for it can also be meaningful. And so that was really the kind of original basis for Joke Race at that point, was thinking, oh, you can create this governance framework by doing it as a contest, where people are competing to submit and try to win and earn from that. And so you can actually gamify all of governance by turning it into this kind of contest platform. And it's the sort of thing that just never could have existed in Web 2 because it has to be built on financial rails for that to be possible.
So what are some really good examples of joke races that showcase, like, hey, you can participate in governance not just through voting, but through submission? Like, what's a good example of the submission part?
Yeah. So, for example, Polygon and Arbitrum DAO both using us for grants right now, and they're doing their grants processes. And so what's really cool is that, you know, we have this simple framework. You submit during a submission period, people can vote during a voting period, and then you can have a rewards pool and reward the winners. And that's really it. But you can design that however you want. You can design whoever you want to submit. You can design however you want to vote. And then, because it's all on-chain, people can build on top of that. So you can have the data feed into any other on-chain service, right? Because anyone can read the data from these public smart contracts and then have that, you know, serve what they're doing. So, you know, you can do contests like a bunch of people have done ones with Hats, which is a role-based NFT provider where you have an election and you say, who wants to be secretary in an organization, right? And people compete. And then if they win, you plug that contest into Hats, you automatically get a role-based NFT that makes you secretary of that organization. With Polygon Arbitrum, what's really cool is that they both did grants in totally different ways. So Polygon did one big event with like hundreds and hundreds of submissions, people coming in, leaving. In some cases, some of the submissions had like 300 comments on them. Those are all on-chain transactions. Like that isn't 300 on-chain transactions and people asking for clarification, trying to pump their bags, doing like, you know, all of these, you know, different activities, right? And then at the end of that, the winners were fed into a separate grant funding platform, GiveIth, where people could go and they could choose to actually fund those. So Polygon was using this as a curation tool to say, okay, we're going to vote and pick which of these 10 are actually going to be the ones that get grants, and then you can go and fund them, right?
And who was voting? The Polygon token holders?
I think so. Yeah, I'm trying to remember. I think I'm not totally sure how they designed it, but I think it was a smaller team. I think it was like 304 people.
Okay, got it.
I might have that wrong. Arbitrum, totally different. They were like, no, we're going to use this completely for grants. And so with Arbitrum, you have every week a really precise prompt that's like, show how you're creating sustainability through DeFi using Arbitrum, right? Write, you know, the following, you know, responses. And then they're giving away a ton of money. They're giving away about $20,000 a week to 4 projects. So each project's getting over $5,000 a week for just submitting, right? And they get that directly through us. There's no other platform that it feeds into. They create a rewards pool. They say each of the top 4 ranks will get 25%.
All on chain.
All on chain, right? And this is really cool because we can both work with other grants platforms. We can also be a self-sustaining grant platform. Like, that's the beauty of composability, right? Is like, if you want to use us all in one, you can. If there's things we don't do, you can just feed us into these other services and do them there. And so like, that's just like a really narrow case, which is grants, and even show that even within that use case, there's a ton of diversity. And the reason I brought up the Arbitrum DAO one is like, the Arbitrum DAO contests are getting like 10 submissions. They're not getting hundreds of submissions with hundreds of comments. And they're happy about that because their point is like, at the end of the day, only 4 people are going to get it anyway. So like, as long as the best 4 projects are competing in this, it doesn't matter who else competes, right? So if we make it really, really hard to compete in this, and it's really precise, and there's so much work that you have to do, that already is a vetting process where we're not looking to use this for marketing and virality, right? And the contrast to that would be like, Mantle has used us for contests being like, write the best tweet about us. And people are going out and they're writing the best tweet and they're submitting them. Arbitrum DAO itself did one that was like, come up with a slogan for us. And then you have these like low hanging ones that just get massive virality.
And we're doing one. We're doing one.
Yeah. I've noticed because my, the Joke Race Twitter feed is just like all people sharing it, like, because they're incentivized, right? And so if you want to optimize for virality and get as many people sharing it as possible, and like, you create incentives and you plug it into quests, and then you tell people who the voters are, and then they're going out to try to lobby the voters, and like, you can create this whole gamified, you add rewards to it, you even make people pay in. So it's like, man, if I paid in $100 to this, I really want to win, right? So like, now I'm going to go out and I'm going to like campaign, and I'm going to like try to get as many people to come and support it. And because there's $10,000 I could win from this, like that is totally doable on one side, which is like massive traction, virality, get as many people involved as possible, turn into a big tentpole, kind of like Twitter event. And then on the other side, doing something like this just about very few submissions that are as high quality as possible. And all that's doable. And like that, and that's what I mean, that's where it gets fun. Like, you can make it really easy for people to submit. You can make it really hard for people to submit, and there's benefits to both of those.
Yeah. The 2 things I notice about Joke Race is, one, that it's unopinionated. You can make a contest about anything. And the second thing is how composable it is. If you want to do everything on Joke Race, you can do that. If you want to combine it with Giveth or Galaxy, you can do that. And I think the last part, like, that's what really makes Web3 and crypto different than Web2. In Web2, you just want everything as a walled garden. And Web3, you want that composability. And instead of DeFi, it's like money Legos. Here, it's kind of like social Legos.
I mean, my co-founder Sean just refers to blockchains as like open APIs. And it's really all it is. It's like it's a permissionless API is what a blockchain is. It's like anyone can draw on this and it can feed anywhere, right? And where it gets really cool also is like the data. So it's like, you can also now go in and you can see, okay, here's our power users, because everybody who got a vote, like, that's because they contributed something of value. They came up with like a meaningful tweet, a meaningful essay, a meaningful contribution. And so you could have a point system to see who your power users are. You could then take those power users and you'd be like, let's learn about them. What wallets are they using? What are the DeFi protocols they're interacting with? Like, now we have like customer segmentation we can do based off of this. You can see what their preferences are. They can take the data and be like, hey, I have a lot in common with this other person because we tend to vote on the same things. We should meet up. We have like a shared preference. We've never voted on a winning option, but we clearly have, some sort of like taste in common. And so there's just all these ways that you can start leveraging the on-chain data as well that you just could never do in Web2, right? Because you would have like that data was being siloed and it wasn't servicing anybody except the company that built it. And so I think like that's also a really exciting thing about it, is just like Rehash used us, which does, contests for who they want to appear on the podcast. And they found out that 20% of their users were Zerion users. And so they went to Zerion and they were like, can you sponsor us? Like, we have the data here to show, that Zerion is big, right? And like, they were able to do that, right? So there's a lot of cool ways to leverage the data, I think, too, that gets really, really fun about building on chain.
Yeah, I feel like there's so much more to be discovered in leveraging data in that regard. Like, we think of like Web2 data all siloed, but Web3 data, how I think of it is with Web2 data, it's really all about like numbers and mass and impressions. And with Web3 data, it's more about the quality of each user. Like you can know exactly what the user's doing, what for better or for worse right now, exactly what the user's doing, how much they have in their wallet, like what protocols they're using and all this stuff. And so that's really powerful. And it allows, podcasts like Rehash and other projects that may not be like big in the traditional world, but they do have valuable users and they are able to get sponsors in that regard.
I totally agree. Like creating localities of like a smaller communities with more valuable members is like both core to people using this, I think, but also like a function of using this, because you find out who your power users are, right? Yeah. They're the ones who are getting the votes. They're the ones who are like contributing meaningfully. And you build on-chain reputation that way. And like the thing is, it's just also new because it's like the only transactions anyone was doing until the past 6 months were financial transactions for lots of money. Like the idea that you can now do transactions for half a cent, and like you can do social transactions, and that you can build up, taste graphs, right? Social graphs on like what people's tastes are based on how they're voting and who they're interacting with. Like all of this is totally a new paradigm. So it's not surprising that no one's taking advantage of the data from this, because the data hasn't been that meaningful when transaction fees were really high. Like valuable data is like actually a very recent development within crypto that everyone I think is still kind of sitting on.
I mean, where do you think this leads? Like, let's say the masses come onto crypto, and everyone's doing half a cent social transactions. Like, what kind of graphs can we see from this? Do you think it would be like a lot? I think it would be a lot easier for smaller creators to actually like make a living for themselves with that data.
I think like imagine someone did a contest where they were like, "Here's a track, I want you to remix it, and you're going to remix this track, and then we're going to have a jury of like 5 people from the music industry vote on their favorites, and the winner will mint it, will release it together, I'll share royalties with you." Like FrxETH basically did this off-chain. Like FrxETH, part of the reason FrxETH became big was doing these kind of contests that were very interactive and like co-creating with his audience, right? And so imagine you do something like that, and it's like, okay, now everybody who's getting a vote from that jury, that's an on-chain attestation showing they're valuable. So even if you lost, you still have gotten like this really cool attestation. But like now imagine, instead of it being a jury of 5 music industry experts, it's actually the community itself. It's like all the people who love FrxETH or love this DJ are like all voting. Well, now it gets really interesting because you can start to see who you share a lot of interest with. Because maybe you voted for like the number 100th item on the list that no one else liked. And like, it's not a popular track, and it's not what everyone else, it's not the mainstream one that everyone else is listening to. But like you voted for it, and there's 5 other people who voted for it. Maybe you're all really passionate. You gave all your votes for that, right? Mm-hmm. That data is like really meaningful to be like, okay, these are my homies. Like these are the people that I want to fuck with because like we share the same music taste, and like fuck that mainstream bullshit that won the contest. Like what's valuable to me is being able to like find other people who share my preferences. And so it's like I can imagine someone like you could build a dating app, right? This is something I'd love to see where it's like every week or every day you do a contest. It's just a poll. It's just like putting out, what are your preferences? What are your emotional preferences? What are your romantic preferences? What are your literary preferences? What are your sexual preferences? Whatever it is. And like people are voting on this every day as a way to learn about themselves. And so they're participating in this, and they're doing these contests, and they're building up this data where at the end of every week, they get some summary that like gives them some insight about themselves. But it's like, you take all that data that's on chain, and now you can start forming a dating app because you can see all the different people who have answered really similarly and have complementary preferences, right? Yeah. And so by doing this polls, right, I didn't come up with this idea. This is a friend of mine. But you can use that as a way to then have all of this data built out that then enables like a dating app to be built on top of that.
When
right?
Cupid race. When Cupid race.
Yeah, Valentine's Day, right? Yeah.
So
I'm definitely not finding my romantic partner, in real life. I'm in fucking crypto, so like I need on-chain data.
I'll find it on chain. And you're going to be on Love on Leverage this week, right?
I am.
Are you already on it? You're tonight.
Yeah.
Are you excited?
I'm excited.
Yeah.
I'm excited. Yeah. I believe in, love on chain is the only love for me at this point. So didn't get it off chain. So,
gotta go on chain.
Yeah.
So what are your future plans with Joke Race? What's on your roadmap coming up?
So right now we're very focused on monetization. So really letting communities monetize. So if you're a creator and you want to like charge submission fees, it gets really exciting. It gets exciting for the reason I said before, which is once people have to pay a bigger submission fee, they're also going to market you a lot more, I think. But it also lets you make money or take that money and put it into future rewards as well, right? So you can imagine like communities every week building up gradually where at the first maybe the fees are very small, but as they start to earn more in submission fees, they create bigger rewards. That drives more people to pay more money for submission fees, which then gives more money for rewards. And so you can start to imagine like,
we like that
flywheel, right?
Yeah.
Like communities can start to be financially sustainable in a way that they were not on Reddit, they were not on Facebook, they were not in AOL chat rooms. Like the whole dream of the internet of like forming communities, but they actually can financially sustain themselves has never happened. And so like that's a lot of our focus, I think, is like just letting people monetize from this. And so we split all fees.
Yeah.
Yep. And so we just added a vote fee, which we haven't announced yet, but it's live. We have submission fees. And so we're just trying to add all these ways where content creators can make money doing this. And that's really the immediate focus. I'd say reducing UX friction is just 90% of what I think about. Like UX in Web3 is very difficult. And so, can go deep into the weeds on that one, but that's an ongoing
This actually
task.
leads to my next question really well, because I'm going to generalize, chunk up a bit from joke race. As a builder, what do you see are the biggest blind spot for other builders, and how can we fix that? Is it UI, UX? Is it something else?
Great question. I mean, there's a bunch of things, right? Like, who are we building for? I think is the first question. Because who you're building for changes the nature of the question. Like, it's been easiest for us to build for whales for a lot of reasons. Whales, first of all, have so much money at stake that they're willing to deal with terrible UX. Whales also tend to be very crypto native and deep, so they don't care about bad UX. They care about tech, and they'll go into a Linux terminal and handle it there if they need to, that's fine. Like, they have all the money, and so they're willing to incur the giant gas fees as well. Like, just every problem with UX has led us to build for whales. And it also makes sense. It's like starting with a luxury market where you only need a few users, but they are already 50% of your entire potential market financially. It makes a lot of sense. And so I think there's a lot of skepticism in this space about trying to do anything else. Like, even trying to go after anyone who's not a whale almost feels idiotic, right? Because it's like, well, the whales have clearly always been the market. We've never found product market fit outside of that. UX is very fucked and very difficult for mass users. The few times that we've sort of gotten there with like Step and Axie, or Terra, often it was a Ponzi. It imploded. It didn't last that long. And also, there's massive risk, just smart contract risk of like everybody's funds, and like self-custody sounds promising, but self-custody is like very, very dangerous thing, right?
It's a big responsibility.
It's a big responsibility. And like it goes all the way down where it's like, I've spent the past few weeks looking at embedded wallets. I love the embedded wallet providers. Can't say enough good things about, everything they're building, but like, it's very challenging. If you want to build interoperable reputation, everything I'm talking about these taste preferences, all of that, right? Like, that would have to be from a wallet that you're using all across the board with these different applications. And the idea that like for a social wallet where you're voting on your favorite music should be the same wallet where you have $100,000 of your life savings, like, that's scary to most people for good reason. But how does your reputation accrue if you can't match those things, right? Like these are all kind of like in the weeds, I think, issues. And I'll be honest, like, I think most of this comes down to key management. Like, it's the most boring issue that nobody wants to talk about. But key management, like who actually is provisioning like these keys to serve the wallet and manage them. MPC, I think, is very much like the solution here. Being able to decentralize key management, which is what Lit Protocol is working on right now, I think is the most important issue.
Wait, NPC? Wait, is NPC a protocol?
Not N. Sorry. So MPC is multi-party computation. And the idea is that instead of you just having one key for yourself, which is your private keys, you now would have, let's say, 3 keys, right? And so one of them is from... It's almost like creating a multi-sig out of every action that you perform, but it's a programmatic multi-sig where the other keys are automatically provided with certain attestations, right? And so The simplest version of that, which MPC nerds will tell you is not MPC, is called SSS. SSS is where, which is used by a lot of the embedded wallets right now, is these shares are fairly fixed. But then with TSS, things like new MPC standards, thanks for asking all this, you can refresh the key. And so the key can actually change, and that makes it a lot safer. What we really need is to decentralize the keys, like being able to take these keys that can serve wallets and decentralize them. It sounds so boring. No one I know is
but
really
this is
talking
the
about this.
foundation of all of
But
crypto.
this is what we fucking need.
Yeah.
This is the foundation of all of crypto. And it's the foundation of like what for me is the biggest issue, which is people are scared to use crypto, and they're right. They're right to be scared to use crypto.
Yeah.
I am scared every time I see an airdrop that I want to claim, and I'm like, how positive am I that this is the right page?
Is this the right link? Yeah.
Is this the right link? Because if it's not, everything's gone. Right? And I'm deep in this shit, and I'm like scared.
This happens all the time. Yeah. This
Right.
happens all the time.
Right.
Even more sophisticated social engineering attacks where people like call. I've heard stories of people calling, up saying like, "Oh, your Coinbase account, this and that," and it's scary. Like, think about the bot problem early on spam and bots and everything on when the internet was really starting to get popular with consumers. There was a bunch of that, but somehow we managed to get through it. And so, I'm sure crypto will find its way through this current, stage of bots and spam and, dangers ahead. It's like, I feel like I'm in a minefield. Yeah, whack me. I feel like, how I describe crypto right now, especially a few years ago, but even a little bit more right now is it's like a minefield. And if you take we're all beta users, and you take one wrong step in the minefield, and then boom, you're gone.
Well, the irony of all that, right, is that's one less
we
mind.
Want to bring on the masses, but we still have the
one
minds.
less mind that exists. So it's this interesting thing that happens, which is every time there's a big hack, it sends this message to everyone that crypto is totally not safe. But actually, crypto is now safer. That one hack that has happened is a hack that will never happen again. It's that whatever error was in that code, and now that is going to become part of the standard auditing playbook to make sure that that's being checked for. And so it's we've seen this. Hacks happen a lot less frequently now, and they happen at lower and lower levels of the code. They still happen, but a lot of the mines have been cleared out by people stepping on them, unfortunately.
Yeah, the beta. We're almost in alpha now.
We are, yeah. I mean, it really fallen soldiers of this industry are everyone who's stepped on one of those, and it sucks. But it's this is. There's no way you can tell me crypto is a lot safer now than it was a year ago, and it's a lot safer than it was a year before, and it'll be a lot safer now. It'll be a lot safer 1 year from now than it is now.
Yeah. I want to go back to the key management you mentioned earlier, because, I think I heard somewhere the other day that, crypto really has made, cryptographic keys, two-way cryptographic keys, actually just everyone just uses them and they don't even think about it. Everyone's a public key and private key. That wasn't commonplace before, but the fact that crypto has made that.
Passkeys, right? Passkeys are gaining traction in Web 2, and those are just private keys, right? So it's
Yeah. That's huge for, big W for cryptography right there.
Totally. Yeah.
And so, getting back to what it's being a builder, how, we touched on this earlier in the interview, and you've had other startups before, what are some of the differences and similarities of building products in Web3 than in Web2?
Yeah. I mean, I think that there's a bunch of differences, but composability for me is the biggest one. I really think you win by working with as many people as possible. Whereas in Web2, you win by Web2 is competitive and Web3 is collaborative. And of course, there's a lot of, that's a nicety and it's a humble, there's a lot of competition within Web3. But fundamentally, when everything is composable, it's your moat is very thin, right? Building in Web3 is much, much harder than Web2 because the moats are barely there. You can create a great protocol that your competitors will all start using, and then they'll undermine you on the fees you're trying to charge on the front end. And we see this happening in DeFi right now, quite a bit, where some of the leading players in DeFi are actually competing against themselves because their own protocol is being used by their competitors, right? That's the downside to composability and not building in a siloed environment is it gets so much harder to build those moats. But I think the flip side of that is thinking, okay, well, how do you build in a way where you're working with as many people as possible and you're all plugging into each other? And how do you create a guild structure where it's the real winners will be the ones who join together because they're all supporting one another on a smart contract level. And it's like they all are feeding into each other in these permissionless ways that makes it this abstracted way for users and like lets users interoperate across these different apps in these different platforms. And we haven't really seen that yet, right? That's also why crypto is not that compelling, I think, for users. And I think a lot of founders frankly build with a kind of siloed mentality too.
Yeah.
But that's, yeah, I think, I don't know. I'd be curious because I'm very much on the consumer side building. You're very much on the DeFi side. Like whether or not that's your takeaway with Frax also, or you have a totally different one.
I listened to this interview with Olaf recently.
Yeah.
He was on Unchained, and I can't get this quote out of my head. It's, building in, Web 2, it's all about like silos and like creating and I mentioned this earlier in the show, creating like your own like walled garden and, and like you want to have this closed mindset. But building in Web 3 is not only like not that, it's the complete opposite of that. Like you want to build, it's the complete 180. You want to build as open and as composable of a network and as a product as possible. So because the more that it can be composable with, other assets and other primitives in the ecosystem, like the more in value that it grows itself. And you see this over and over and over again in Web3, whether it's like Bitcoin, Ethereum, Uniswap, like all the best protocols are like the ones where everyone just like starts plugging into and it becomes like literally a protocol itself. It just becomes like the standard for the industry. With Frax in particular, since the beginning, the whole mantra and mindset of like Sam K and the Frax team have been, positive sum. We want to be positive sum, and we want to like grow and build this pie together with other DeFi protocols. And you're right. I think there's like a good amount of DeFi protocols and builders that kind of have this like, oh, like we're going to like, compete and like take most of the competitions. Like guys, like the pie is really small, especially compared to TradFi. Like we're much better off working together. And you've seen that in Frax's history on how, it's like operated in the whole Curve ecosystem and just, basically winning the Curve wars, being the base pool and, lowering the cost of capital for stablecoins that want to have liquidity. Like you go to Frax and they'll hook you up and, you guys and vote incentives, all that stuff together. But basically, positive sum mindset. And that's how they're building Frax though. That's how they're building their L2 with the same kind of mindset. Yeah. But instead of the incentives being at the liquidity layer, and you have to rethink of the incentives like, wait, it's at the infrastructure, it's at the chain level now. So it's a whole different kind of activity you want to incentivize.
I think like what's also interesting about this is how it changes your job as a founder, because like part of your job as a founder in Web3 is to be social. Like your ability to just form connections, be out there, be public, like, and be visible, and just be talking with everybody in the space is how you're going to build that composability, like in a way that feels really different from Web 2. Like, I think on Web 2, like you wouldn't really build your company on Twitter. And like in Web 3, like building your company on Twitter is like very much a strategy.
Yeah.
Like that's actually like it's a big part of company building in Web 3.
Yeah, it's fascinating. It's fascinating how social this industry is and how there's such extremes of like you're extremely online. And then when these conferences and events happen, you're extremely off. You're at these conferences. There's just nonstop events. You're going like offline. Are you going to be at ETH Denver coming up?
Oh yeah, of course I'll be in Denver. My job is to be social.
Yeah, exactly. There's so many
social
events.
that I'm willing to go to fucking Denver in February. That's how social I'm willing to be.
Hey, you know that ETH Denver used to be on Valentine's Day?
Oh my God, that's gotta be incredible. That makes so much sense.
Of course they would put it on. Luckily they made it like a little bit later, but still, everyone like it. Talk about like opposite thinking.
Everyone in the ecosystem being like, thank God I finally have something to spend Valentine's Day with. Yeah. AKA me. That would be me. Yeah.
Yeah. But what are you most looking forward to at ETH Denver coming up?
I'm going to play the whole thing by ear probably. But there's a bunch of cool stuff. There's a bunch of restaking events. Obviously, narrative building for Eigenlayer right now is just so huge, which I'm really excited by. And I think it's just a game changer in like tons and tons of ways. So I think spending a lot of time with like the restaking side of the scene is definitely part of my hope. Yep.
Yeah. I was reading somewhere that like people confuse restaking with rehypothecation or like leverage. but it's actually not leverage. It's more like you're not rehypothecating the asset, you're rehypothecating the security. Like this,
Yep.
which is like, yes, the term's the same, but it's actually different. For people
we
that
need new terms, you know,
new terms.
it's like, well, because you can't get margin called with, you know, if you get slashed with eigenlayer. And like that's the key thing, is like the liquidity cascade that happens in DeFi, where it's like, oh, if I've over leveraged this 100x, you know, because I've rehypothecated it, and then I lose it, you know, well, then that price is going to go down, and that's going to cause someone else who over leveraged by 100x to lose theirs, which will then cause someone else to over leverage. So you know, you get this massive liquidity cascade. And like in a system where everyone's restakes their security, like you might lose your share, but that's not going to affect a price, which then lowers it, and then it forces everyone else to lose their share, right? The only way that would happen is if like you control so much of the security and you have gotten slashed so much that now the entire pool is compromised. And with the kind of deposits that we're seeing in Eigenlayer, I don't think that that's a legitimate risk here, personally. So, you know, there will be risky pools. There will be lost investments. There's real danger with the LRTs that they will be doing investment strategies where they're investing in the really risky shit. But like, you know, the idea that you're facing liquidity cascades and like anything similar to that, it's just, it's not the case. And it's not like you're getting slashed, you know, your entire stake. Like you're getting slashed for, you know, a particular share for, you know, a given event. And also this is all deterrence against being malicious anyway. So people really shouldn't be getting slashed unless they're being malicious, you know, to that degree. Right.
It's like, okay, this is already used for security. There's actually some room for it to be used for more security for different things, whether it could be securing a chain or even just doing like a specific function.
Right.
And so it's, you know, it's really interesting. I remember in December, January of last year, so a year ago, I went really deep into Eigenlayer. We had Shriram on the show, and I was like, I was Eigenlayer pilled then. And that at that time, everyone was like all about LSTs, and now everyone's all about L2s and LRTs.
Oh yeah. And then we're going to see another cycle probably where people get really excited by L1s in another 6 months.
L1s again,
So, the all L1s I think will come back.
Aggregation layers. Like
I mean, honestly, what Polygon is doing is amazing. No, you know, Polygon, I guess like because it became known as the corporate brand and whatever, it's not hip these days. But like, sorry, what Polygon's doing is fucking awesome.
No, they may be corporate, but they're doing a lot. They contributed a ton to ZK research.
So much.
David and Jack, shout out to David and Jack, friends of the show. We've had Jack on a few times. Any Dave we support on here. You know, they've been doing a lot over at Polygon, and you know, they're really good at just kind of absorbing things in, and also just like following the trend, like not following trends, but actually like creating trends. And like, oh, they saw ZK EVM becoming a thing. Like, oh, now they're seeing this aggregation layer, like eventually becoming a thing.
Yeah. And 100% on all of this. They're just, I mean, parallelizable EVM, they were way ahead of also. Yeah. Like that was
so
something they were
stuff.
working on like well over a year ago, you know? Agglayer is really cool. CDK is really cool. Like the CDK is like a way for anybody to have a ZK roll up, with, you know, validity proofs. Like this is sick. So yeah, I don't know. I'm a huge fan of Polygon.
So with it becoming easier and easier to deploy a rollup, do you believe that there's going to be a world of thousands of rollups?
Yes and no. So yeah, that's a really good question. So my take on it is like, if you have a very undifferentiated rollup from any other, it's very challenging, right? Like it's very easy for anyone to launch a rollup now, just like it was easy for anyone to launch a token a few years ago. But like the same thing, you know, this is content creation. Like we can go even further back in creating tokens. You can go to like YouTube. It's like 99% of content that's created and stored, uploaded to YouTube is never seen, right? Nobody watches it because it's not differentiated. It's not interesting. And like YouTube's whole game is like they have to support that 99% of creation and store it and pay the cost for that for the 1% that is actually interesting to people, right? Mm-hmm. And it's kind of similar. It's like most rollups will be undifferentiated. And like we're already seeing this. It's like, yeah, there's a lot of great improvements coming to be able to do cross-chain swaps and cross-chain payments. But like liquidity is still a bridge, if a diminish or a moat, if a diminishing one. And it's, it's hard to launch a chain and get people to bridge over and start using, providing liquidity and using it if you aren't differentiated. And so I think a lot of the services right now, which are really based on like anyone can launch a chain with these same services, it's a little bit quixotic to think that those are all just going to take off. And those are, that the world of like tons and tons of rollups that all look the same is going to take off. With that said, while there is definitely room to play with the technical side, especially for gaming, I think like games will want to have their own rollups where with their own technical implementation, they can do, and then there's a lot of cool stuff you could do with on the technical side with like rollups. Like you could do freemium payments. Like we've subsidized gas fees for these users who have been allowed us to use the chain. You can change block size and finality and like, you can take more risks in order to let people like interact faster. Like there's lots of cool stuff you can do there. But I really think like actually the game is tokenomics and brand and ideology. Like
let's break that down. All three: tokenomics, brand, and ideology.
Like how you're funding people. Like look at Optimism. It's like, if we're being honest here, like is Optimism technically the best chain? It's fine. It's great. Like it's a little expensive. It works well. It's good. Hopefully they'll have fraud proofs. But like values wise, like Optimism has killed it because they have this values of like retroactive public goods and they fund a lot of people. And like that gets people excited by using the chain because like they want to participate in the system that not only can get them money on a mercenary level, but is doing so in a values aligned way. Right. And so like values, I think is actually a really big proposition, that could really take off. And tokenomics, it's like being able, like what Berachain is doing. Berachain is great tech, but like what's really, really cool about Berachain, right, is that and they're not L2, they're L1, but like is the tokenomics that they have in place, because like now you're providing whole new incentive structures in place to be able to gain power over time the longer that you've been in that ecosystem. And so they're driving new incentives for people to hold and to continue getting emissions and then to gain power and then play these games within that ecosystem too. And there's just so much you can play with in terms of like incentives for people to provide liquidity, incentives for people to stake, incentives for people to vote, incentives for people to play games, incentives for people to build apps. And it's like all of this can be designed within your tokenomics in ways that we just haven't experimented with because all the focus has been on like fixing the tech and making the tech like even minorly scalable, right? So like that's where I do think we're going to see a lot of great rollups. But I'd actually be surprised if the innovation that we're seeing with them is on the tech level. I think that'll happen to some degree. I think it's mostly going to happen.
Are you familiar with fractal points, how the fractal point system is?
Not too well. Show me a way there.
You're going to love it. Imagine if there was Google PageRank, but for smart contracts and users that actually rewards users and smart contracts based on how much value they're bringing to a chain. And so basically how fractal points work is there's something called the Flux mechanism. And the Flux mechanism, there's like 3 different variables that go into it. It's basically use of smart contracts, like how much the smart contract being used, the VE boost. So let's say if you have FrxETH, and also, asset, how much of assets you have. So if you're holding like Frax, if you're holding FrxETH or like any of the Frax assets, that goes into the calculation. And that is, that's calculated once a week. And then every week you're rewarded points. So in this system, this actually, incentivizes you to use if I'm a builder, I want to actually build contracts that people use. And if I'm a user, I want to use contracts that are being used a lot. And so imagine so imagine if Uniswap, let's say if Uniswap, first deployed on Arbitrum for example's sake, and everyone just goes to Uniswap because it's the standard, it's the most used contract, and Arbitrum had a point system. It would just be rewarded points every week, and then eventually those points return to something redeemed more liquid. And this is the first system I believe that actually rewards users and smart contracts on this kind of pro rata basis. And what's the second order effect of this is that if I'm a builder, I'm looking to deploy to a chain and I'm looking to airdrop to users. Well, not only can I just airdrop to FrxETH stakers, that's great, but I know who the power users are from the points.
That's okay. So that's the really cool fucking thing about points that everyone is sitting on is that developing points isn't even just developing points for the protocol that is using them. It's developing points for your entire reputation or any future protocol that comes along.
Exactly.
And so two examples, like one is us, like with Joke Race, it's like if people voted for you in a meaningful contest, that shows that you're valuable to that community. And so like if Polygon is running a bunch of contests or Optimism is running a bunch of contests or Frax is running a bunch of contests and people are continually winning these because they're giving great submissions of memes and ideas and feature requests, you know, et cetera. Like, you know, those are valuable people. Like even someone who never won a single one came in 10th place every week, but they overall got more votes than anyone else. That's your most valuable builder, right? That's your most valuable contributor. And that points is meaningful. But the key thing is like, even if Frax never airdropped anything to that person, anyone can look and be like, oh, wow, they're really great. I want them on my team, right? And I think like where this gets really kind of wild is Eigenlayer, because it's like with Eigenlayer, you get this really kind of crazy flywheel where it's like people will restake their ETH in anticipation of an airdrop. So they will, you know, start restaking on all of these other protocols, being like, protocol's probably going to airdrop to the people who restake ETH on it because we're the ones who provided security, right? And the more that they're restaking in Eigenlayer, the more security, you know, is restaked ETH is there, the more that's going to draw protocols to come in and say, okay, we should build there because this is an environment, right, where instead of having to spend years raising tons of money to deploy, we can deploy now. And like, we can get users who are incentivized because they think they're going to airdrop from us. And so they're all going to restake their ETH and get excited too. And it's like, then once they're building there, that's going to draw more users who want to restake their ETH, which is going to drive more protocols, which will draw more users, right? All of this kind of airdrop cycle. But like the key thing there is like, maybe some of those won't ever give an airdrop. Maybe they won't bother, right? And in that case, you can still see, okay, who are the people who have provided value? Like, who are the people who are out there willing to take these risks, willing to support? Like, maybe they supported some other protocol instead of us, but we want to vampire attack them. So we're going to go, that our competitor never airdropped them, fuck them. We'll airdrop them instead. Like, you can get all of these really, really wild systems in place, right? You know, SushiSwap was like the kind of first ones that saw this, I think. But like, it gets really exciting to think like, yeah, this is data for anybody to use.
Yeah, and it's all really exciting. Yeah, SushiSwap was the first, and I probably like the most successful. Like, think about it; they scared Uniswap so much they've like forced Uniswap to drop a token. Like, that's like pretty crazy.
Yeah,
I don't know if they would have. Do you think Uniswap would have ever dropped a token if SushiSwap never came along?
I mean, has Uniswap ever given utility to that token?
No, there you go. That answers the question. I have a question. So
they have a little bit. Yeah,
I think what's like great about like points and especially the Fractal system is like anybody can like go and stake, but what points do is like it actually judges like the other actions you're doing on chain. And I feel like there's like a lot of other maybe I'm not familiar with like other ecosystems, like people just like go and they stake, like for example if they stake like Tia or like Dimension, like, and they're just like, yes, I'm just gonna stake it, I'm gonna do nothing, and I'm just gonna get airdrops, I'm gonna dump them. Like, I don't see how that system is, you know, sustainable long term. And wasn't there something with Cosmos and Atom? Some like people had this like Atom piece, like, oh, I'm gonna buy and like stake Atom, get all the Atom airdrops, and like it seems is that like replaying again? Am I just like not informed? I think data, like what Celestia's doing with data availability is like phenomenal. There's a reason why like they're actually like getting customers, but like I'm more talking about the tokenomics. And it's like just like a bunch of random people just stake and they just expect something and do nothing. Like, I
really don't understand why we airdrop to airdrop farmers. Like,
that's what I'm trying to say.
Like, why should airdrop farmers get airdrops? Like those are the people who are there to dump you. Like, those are the people that, you know, like they literally just want to take the money and move on to the next project. Like, why would you want to put your protocol in their hands, right? And it's like, and so the two questions for me, I think there's two pieces. And one is what I've been talking about over and over again, which is like reputational value of like, who's actually meaningful to you? Like who's someone who actually has provided value to you that is non-fungible and meaningful. And like they get the protocol and they spent time and they've actually like marketed you and supported you in a way that is like more qualitative, but also more meaningful. Right. I think like that's the one piece. The other piece is retention. It's like, can you also use point systems as an incentive mechanism to get people to do the actions you want? So part of the reason that we're airdropping airdrop farmers is because everyone knows that they're doing it, but they still want to incentivize people to stake. So it's like, that's, you know, it's still worth it to us to airdrop the airdrop farmers because even though they're not here for the right reasons, even though they're going to dump us, we still need people to stake, and so we're going to incentivize that. But it's like, is that really the thing that you want to be incentivizing most? Doesn't it matter that much in a world of restaking? You know, it's like, what can we incentivize instead? And what I'd really like to see is like more points being used to incentivize retention behavior. So I think some of the stuff you're discussing with Frax is like really good at that. I'd like to see multipliers. It's like the more actions you perform, the bigger the multiplier gets on the points that you're getting. So it's like, maybe you're barely getting points until you performed 1,000 actions. But at that point, then it starts to go up dramatically, you know, stuff like that.
That's a really good one. Perform 1,000 actions on chain. I mean, there's so many that the design space for it and the incentive space for it is, you know, basically unlimited. Before we go here, I had to like ask you this question. You know, what are your thoughts on Frax?
I mean, fucking love Frax, but like, okay, so my question for Frax is like, Frax is getting like Polygon these days. It's like it's a wide web, right? We got the bonds, we got Fractal. Like what's your vision for Frax in terms of thinking about algorithmic stablecoins?
It's not well.
I know it's not. That's what I'm asking.
It's funny. I just did an interview this week with Block Bytes, and I had the Tucker Carlson Diamond Poon interview when he asked like, oh, let's talk about like Ukraine. He's like, let me give you like the whole history of Russia before I get to that. I had the same thing. They're like, let's talk about Fractal. I'm like, let me give you the whole history of Frax before we get to Fractal. And so I'm not going to do that now. But the vision for I'll let you watch the interview. But the vision for Frax is to be, you know, the issuer of the most important assets in the 21st century and have the sub protocols and infrastructure to support them. So what are the most important assets of the 21st century? Right now you have like the dollar, you know, it's ubiquitous everywhere. You have ETH. There's going to be Frax BTC. They have their own CPI peg stablecoin. And so whatever, you know, asset actually has like wide use and like it has like a network effect, they want to like be the M2 issuer on top of that. And like building the infrastructure.
But let's go to the other part of the question, which is like, how algorithmic is this versus like how collateralized is this?
Oh no, it's fully collateralized. Everything's
100% collateralized.
Like it's fully collateralized. It's fractional, you know, in this, well, I mean, we can like, get into it in the sense how it's fractional, but like it's always redeemable for like one of one. Like for example, like Frax is going up to be 100, is like it's on track to hit 100% collateral ratio. That was voted on last year, and like that, you know, we've done the experiment, you know, last cycle. It's like, all right, we got to go up to 100% collateral ratio, and we're getting there. You know, ETH is like 100%. All Frax ETH is 100% collateralized. You can actually go redeem ETH. Like you can wait like 14 days to redeem it, or like go in the curve pool and do it. I can get into like a really like deep discussion about it. But yeah, most important you know, issuer 21st century assets. You know, and then I like to think of Fractal as like their AWS play. And it's like, okay, like if we're gonna like have like the app layer, you know, well, how Amazon, like they were just started out as a store that sold books, online store like that. And then they were like, hey, they saw like huge opportunity with server space. So like, hey, we have to like, this makes sense. We're going to go in with it. This is like the same kind of thinking with Fractal, and to make
So with the dollar, of course, there is no digital dollar. So using Frax makes sense. For ETH, there's no native liquid staking token. So like being able to stake it, like use
there's Frax. Well, there's FrxETH and SFrxETH.
That's what I mean. Yeah. It's like ETH doesn't have its own, so it's like it makes sense that you would use Frax instead. What's the case for like other future tokens that come along and maybe have like already provided, they're already digital and they already provide, you know,
I mean, possible ones.
Why do you use the Frax version?
Possible. Yeah. You know, with that, you have to figure out like, okay, like where does like the risk-free yield come from? And so it's like, okay, with ETH, that's easy. That's a beacon chain yield. But, you know, maybe in the future, there's like a Frax Sol or like a Frax Tia, like FRX Sol, FRX Tia. And it's like, oh, like the Sol, it comes from, you already see it on Sol. You see like wraps, you see these, I think it's Jiddle Sol and like other ones. And so like there's a possibility there in the future, but it just has to like get big enough. And like the most important assets of the 21st century.
I think it's cool because it's kind of what Polygon's doing with Ag Layer on like an infra level is what you're doing on a token level. It's like you're creating like a single aggregated place to, you know, access all this liquidity from different chains, from different projects, right? All in one place. And so like just as a UX improvement alone, like the ability to access all the it's like Tower of Babel. It's like there's going to be all of these chains with all their own tokens, and like if you can access that in one place with one universal kind of standard and build points from that and build a reputation off of that, like there's massive incentive to just use the Frax version of all these things if it's also accruing you a lot of like reputational value that can be leveraged, I think, in a lot of ways too. So it's pretty cool to think about. Yeah,
like the possibilities are really endless. And
pretty cool.
It's been crazy to see the journey for over the past few years, and especially like with Fractal, he's right now in a guarded launch. It'll be launched soon, fully to the public. You want to get your FrxETH, stake it by March 6th for like the first points drop. The snapshot's taken there. And then like the first point drop will be March 13th. Yeah. Like I'm literally like screaming it from the rooftops because, I'm positive sum. I want everyone to win. I want everyone to like take part in the success of Frax because we're all in this together. But so that's it for the interview. But before we go, we always do like a quick lightning round. So we'll do like 3 questions real quick. Okay. When was the first time you touched a chain and sex doesn't count?
2017.
27. What'd you do?
Bought. Well, I guess right. If I bought on Coinbase, is that touching?
That's you're having sex. No sex. You have to be an incel on chain. Sorry.
Oh fuck. Okay. Whoa. Wait. Okay. So I'm touching the chain, meaning
you're touching the chain. What? You're doing like a transaction, like you're using DeFi or like you're sending Bitcoin or doing something.
I did send Bitcoin, in 2017. So I think we can count that. I got Ledger. Yeah, I did some shit with that.
Okay.
Yeah, but that's like first base though. That's not like
first base.
Yeah, Ledger's only first base. Yeah.
Okay.
That's just KISS territory.
Yeah. Next question would be, if you weren't in crypto and you weren't in startups, what would you be doing as your career?
Writing screenplays.
Writing screenplays. Okay. Yeah. Nice. And last question, who would you recommend as a guest? Who do you want to see on Flywheel next?
Cami. You got to get Cami Ramos on.
Cami Ramos?
Yeah. Cami, DevRel extraordinaire, formerly at Fuel on the Graph. Co-founder of I think Women in Web3, bunch of
cool. Okay.
Cool. And like just that. The most brilliant and colorful and smartest person you'll meet. Huge fucking fan of Cami.
Cami. All right, cool. That's a good. I really
every
like this.
Podcast needs Cami. So.
Every podcast needs Cami. Okay.
The
Cami show is real. David, thanks so much for coming on. Where can people find you and Joke Race?
I'm on Twitter at divine_economy. Joke Race is jokerace.io, and our Twitter, shockingly, is jokerace_io.
_io. David, thanks so much for coming on. We hope to see you soon.
Thank you, dude. Thanks. Long live Dave Dow.
Long live Dave Dow. Full circle. See ya. All right, we just wrapped up an episode with Mr. David Phelps at Divine Economy on Twitter, going all into about on-chain reputation, the world on-chain. And I think what people can get out of this the most is like, blockchain is more than just DeFi. Blockchain is more than just like crypto as we know it. And I think there's a lot of ways that this stuff is going to evolve. And the more that you build in an open manner and in a composable manner, that's how you're going to grow. It's kind of the exact opposite thinking of the Web 2 world and these closed systems. And like I said in the interview, that's what Olaf talks about. So Kit, I know. What are your thoughts on this one?
I mean, I am sorry to say that I am a listener in this one. So I'm
why don't you explain to the class why you couldn't make it? Go ahead. Go explain to the class why you couldn't make it.
Yeah. So anyways, I feel like for these on-chain quest stuff, it is a very, how do I say this? Segmentation in Web 2 is extremely difficult to do because like it's always gated behind, you know, whether with Facebook ad network or Google's ad mob, like they have all the demographic data. But now once everything is on chain and you could build this profile of a user, segmentation and targeting becomes extremely open and accessible by all, which greatly reduces the cost to reach the right user for the right product. So I think this is...
You can get a lot better data because it's on chain. You can like say like, oh, you can see exactly what this person's doing. So it's going to be like, just think about email. Like think about all the, email is a good compare. I'm reading like Read Write Own right now. And like email is a great comparison because like you have your email inbox and like you get so much better engagement when you do, you know, just that's why you see Substack and all these subscriber lists like pop off and they're valuable because you're direct to the email inbox. Whereas if you're on like Twitter and YouTube, you have this like thing, this giant monolith in the middle that's taking all the data and like deciding who rises and who falls. Meanwhile, with like email, like it's up to you. So, you know, I think it's going to be a really cool future ahead. And shout out David Phelps for helping us bring us there. So, but if you want to keep up with the future now, you know what to do. Hit that bell button. Subscribe right now on YouTube. Go do it right now. Leave us a comment. Let us know what you think. Give us a like. Follow us on all our socials at Flywheel DeFi on Twitter, TikTok, and Telegram. Make sure you hit us up on FrxETH as well at Flywheel. Subscribe to our website, flywheeldefi.com. You know, I just said it. It makes a difference. You're going to get way better quality information if you do that. Make sure you follow me on Twitter at DeFi Dave, on FrxETH at DeFi Dave. DeFi Dave 22 on Twitter. There we go.
And you can follow me at 0xcapital_K.
We'll see. With all our love, we'll see you next week. Peace. Everything said on this episode is not financial or tax advice. This channel is strictly for educational purposes and is not an investment advice or solicitation to buy or sell any assets or to make any financial decisions. This video is not tax advice whatsoever. Please talk to your accountant and do your own research.